Welcome to another edition of How to Build Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Rod Khleif, and I'm thrilled you're here. And we've got a real treat today. The gentleman's name is David Osborn. Now, David started investing with his mom, and then in less than 10 years, built one of the top real estate brokerages in the country. In fact, it's the 20th largest real estate company in the country with over 2,000 agents, $5 billion plus in sales. The guy's a freaking rock star. He's done thousands of multifamily units. It's got somewhere between 800 and 1,000 units. Plus, he's an author and a co-author with someone that I admire greatly. So I'm really grateful to have him on the show. David, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Rod. It's good to be here with you today.
Absolutely. And you know, I thought we were going to be talking about the book that you co-wrote with Paul Morris, who I've had on the show, which is an awesome book called Wealth Can't Wait. And you guys know, if you're listening, that I don't really promote much stuff. I don't have advertising. In fact, I rarely endorse anything, but I absolutely will endorse this Wealth Can't Wait book. And frankly, I know that I'm going to endorse the book we're going to talk about in a minute as well, because, well, you'll find out in just a minute. But David, talk about how you got started in the real estate business, because it's such an incredible story, you know, from where you started to where you are now. If you just take a few minutes and kind of give a little background.
Sure. So my dad was a soldier, a Green Beret colonel. He used to call himself a trained killer. So when he retired, he says there's not a lot of work for trained killers. He loved it. We were 7 generations of soldiers in America going back. In fact, until the Gulf War, my family had fought on every war ever that America had ever fought.
Wow.
On both sides, actually, of the Civil War as well. So we were just a martial family. A lot of military people in the family fought, you know, in the War of Independence too. So my dad obviously was eager for my brother and I to follow his footsteps into the military. After he retired, my mother got into real estate. She had been a stay-at-home mom, which as an officer's wife is a full-time job, in addition to raising the kids. And she got into real estate, and pretty quickly she was massively successful. She became the top agent in her company. This is back before cell phones, before even fax machines, before barely computers. They were involved, but they were barely involved in the process. So being a top producer back then, you were limited by those technologies to not doing very much. But in no time at all, she was making more money annually than my dad ever made. I mean, 30 years in the military doesn't pay that well. It's obviously very rewarding in other factors, in other ways. So when it came for me to choose a career, I had a choice between becoming yet another trained killer or real estate. And I was always partial to, you know, to real estate. When I was in high school, my folks bought 4 rental properties. It was right before the crash of 1987. And so their partner in those homes faded out. So my folks ended up with 4 rental properties around Austin. And I used to go mow the lawns on those properties. I used to have to go collect rent sometimes. We had one of our properties had a meth lab in the attic, but we didn't know it then. Since then, it's been torn down, that property. But I had to go talk to that guy and ask him to move some stuff off the other side of the duplex. You know, a lot of interesting things that come with real estate, you know, angry dogs, and my dad used to pack heat sometimes when he'd go talk to people and all that kind of stuff. But I loved it. I enjoyed it very much. So when it came between a choice of the Army or real estate, I decided, you know, ultimately after some soul searching, to go into real estate. And it was a great move. My mom happened to be the 5th agent at Keller Williams, and Keller Williams now has 180,000 people in it. So I joined her and her team in 1994, sold houses for 3 years. And then after 3 years, I decided to start opening franchises. Long story short, became the largest franchise owner in Keller Williams, combination of some skill, lots of really good mentors, and a lot of good luck. As that company grew, I grew with it. And today we are, as you mentioned, we're actually in the top 10 largest real estate companies.
No kidding. Holy cow. How cool is that? Wow. How exciting. And, you know, that's incredible. And, you know, I think what I admire about you and Paul Morris, your cohort there, and is that you guys give back. It's not just about you know, going out there and making money, which you're obviously very, very good at, and adding value, but you're about also adding value through giving back in your writing. And like I said, I mentioned, you guys listening, I mentioned this Wealth Can't Wait. It's such a cool book because I think what it does is it encapsulates lots of other strategies and thoughts and profound knowledge in a very easy to read format. And I had, like I said, I had it by my bed for probably a month or two, and I'd read a chapter a night. And I've got thousands of books, so that's saying a lot because I was so impressed with it. So I can't stress that enough. But I know that you're also in multifamily. You've done a couple thousand doors and that you're still in somewhere between 800 and 1,000 doors. And how do you feel about multifamily in general? I know, how you feel about the market where it stands right now, but as an asset class and as an opportunity, what are your thoughts on it?
I love real estate and always have, simply because, my favorite saying is don't wait to buy real estate and wait. And no matter what real estate asset class you're in, if you can hold out for the long term, real estate always goes up. It may go down in some pockets, but generally speaking, the overall trend is appreciation of real estate, especially in the right areas. So, I love multifamily. Multifamily, in my opinion, is probably the best asset class you could possibly own. It's got so many, my favorite, one thing I look for in real estate is multiple exits, multiple ways to manage. If you're industrial, you got one or two tenants. If you're office, you might have 10, 15 tenants, but any one of them can have a massive impact on your business. But when you're multifamily, you have 100, 200, 300 tenants. One of them is not going to change your destiny, your economic outcome. So right. Multifamily, I think, is probably the best asset class. The only thing right now, as you know, it's really, really red hot, which makes it maybe not the best asset, because one of your goals in life should be to buy lower and sell higher. People say buy low, sell high. That's not true. You just want to buy in the bottom half of the clock and sell in the top half of the clock. If you try to wait to buy at 6 and sell at 12, you'll never make a move, because no one ever knows exactly when 6 is and no one ever knows exactly when 12 is. Right. But it's harder in multifamily right now, which is why I like single family so much, because I think if you buy 100 single families in a similar area, it serves a lot like a multifamily.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. And I had what I call a seminar in 2008, because I had 800 houses and multiple apartment complexes, and I didn't buy in the same area. That was a screw up, and so logistically it was unfeasible, and I crashed and burned. I lost $50 million in '08 because I had houses 2 hours one direction, 2 hours the other direction, and logistically it didn't manage well. And that coupled with high taxes and high insurance here in Florida, wind and flood insurance. But the big thing was the logistics of the maintenance. If I sent somebody out to do a maintenance ticket on a house, it might take him an hour to get there. He might go see what was wrong. Then he'd have to go to Lowe's or Home Depot to get parts, come back. Maybe he'd go back to Lowe's or Home Depot if there was, if he needed more things. And what would take 30 minutes in an apartment complex could take all day in a house. And you multiply that times 800, and then what happened in '08, I crashed and burned. But I completely agree with your assessment. If you've got 100 houses and they're geographically close to each other so you can manage them effectively, I couldn't agree more. They're a great asset to own.
Well, 08 was a once in a lifetime deal too. That took out a lot of good operators. That was if you were pressing up in 6, 7, and 8, you just hit a 100-year storm, 1,000-year storm.
1,000-year storm. Yeah, I agree. Where do you feel like we're at in the market cycle? I'd love to get your opinion and what you think is going to happen.
I think it's at the top. Everybody thinks it's at the top. I'm still buying. I think I've never seen so many people convinced that we were at the top of the market. I was looking at The Economist magazine yesterday in Barnes and Noble, and there it was right on the front of The Economist, like, how bad is this recession going to be? Well, normally people don't telegraph recessions that clearly. That's the only thing that gives me hope, is the majority of people are generally wrong. So maybe we do have a few more legs left in this, but for sure, it seems like we're really near the top, if not at it. I also own a large real estate company, so I get to get feedback in sales from all across the country. And I'm telling you, it's slowing down right now. And I have people, the NAR studies are slowing down. So rates are going up. It's usually a good time to be selling when rates are going up. And I'm not really a seller. I like to buy and hold for the long term. So it's hard for me to sell, but I think we're near a top. But that's the great thing about that is as you peak and you crest and you go down, the opportunities get better. So it'll be a little hard for a little bit, but the marginal investors and the marginal renters, home buyers, so the marginal investors will get pushed out. The marginal home buyers will become renters. Mm-hmm. So in a softening market, if you can hang out for the first year or so, it usually gets better. And that's
it does. And with crisis comes opportunity, and it may not be a crisis, but there'll certainly be opportunity. And I'm telling my coaching students, keep your powder dry, make sure that, when you're speaking to your investors to forewarn them that it may seem scary, but that's the best time to buy, bottom line. And if you pre-frame your investors that way, then, they're ready. You tell them you're just getting ready. This is getting ready. And, no,
And
that's
that's
all.
why, and we're not where we were in '08 because there's not
Right.
these zero doc loans, right? These
Right,
guys are
right.
not leveraged at 99% on every property they're doing, which is what they were doing before. Like I'm still buying a lot. It's still hard to get money on these things. They haven't
Right.
been easy at all. And I have a very low leverage on average in my properties. So they haven't been as willy-nilly with the money as they were last time.
I couldn't agree more. It's much more difficult to get financing. So I want to circle back to something you said just because it resonated with me. You talked about your mom inspiring you to get into real estate. Same thing happened for me. In my example, my mom bought the house across the street when I was 14 for 30 grand. And when I was about to graduate from high school, it was worth 20 grand more than that. And that was my tipping point to get into real estate. So that kind of resonated with me. So do you live in Austin? Is that your home base?
Yeah, I live in Austin, but I do deals all across the country. I prefer the Sun Belt, like many people. So, yeah, I love Austin. It's a great city to live in. I do some around here, but, well, I'm doing a decent amount in Austin too, but I would say it's less than half of my acquisitions and efforts.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's smart. I mean, there's 80 million people getting older and colder. So, it's prudent to be investing in the southern states, in my opinion. So let's segue into, I was telling you before we started recording that I've given away probably 400 copies of Hal Elrod's book, The Miracle Morning. And I give it to my coaching students. It's one of the things they always get. In fact, I've got a coaching student that has done that every day, I think for just over 2 years.
Wow.
And of course, he's a rock star. His name's Powell. He's an awesome guy. He's going to love it that I gave him a shout out here. But yeah, so, I'm a big proponent in that, but let's dig into what that book's about. And then let's talk about kind of the book that you wrote with him.
Yeah, so Hal's concept, and Hal and I are good friends. Our kids go to school together. And Hal's concept is get up 1 hour earlier, have that hour to yourself, spend 10 minutes doing the savers of 6 times, 6 different things: silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. So it's a great tool. I mean, I've been using it. I can't say I've done it 2 years in a row like Powell. Was it Powell?
Powell, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Powell has. But for sure, the days that I get up and get my miracle morning in, get to my reading chair, scribe, read, visualize, pray, silence for me is prayer. It's the same thing.
Right.
Are better days. They're days that go well. And the more of those 6 things I do, the better I tend to have of that day. And so I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big proponent of it. When you're an A-type personality and you read that book the first time, you're like, get up an hour earlier. Geez, what's new about that? I get up at 4 o'clock anyway, or 5 o'clock anyway.
Right.
But then when you really dig into it, it's not just about getting up early. It's about owning the morning. And if you own the morning, you can own the day. And it's starting earlier so you can settle down, not be reactive to life, but be in action towards your goals. Proactive. My dad used to hate the word proactive. He said it doesn't exist. It's either action or reaction. But so it's about being in action, right? So I use a lot of tools in that. In fact, the other day, one of my kids called me and she was struggling with something, and I coached her through it using the idea of visualizing the miracle morning, like seeing yourself in a power state right when you walk into this difficult situation. And she did it and called me later and said, man, that was awesome. It worked like a charm. And I had the rest of the experience was really good. And again, it's just this idea of pausing, settling yourself down, and setting yourself up to win the day. And that's what miracle
Can we go through those 6 things a little slower? I know exercise for sure is one of them. What are the other ones again?
Yeah, so it starts with silence.
Silence.
So to me, that's prayer, because I like to pray a lot. Or sometimes I'll meditate, but I'm better at prayer than meditating. Secondly is affirmations. So today is going to be a great day. I'm going to have great meetings. I'm going to look after the people correctly. I'm going to serve the people in my community. Whatever you want to say in that area, affirmations. Some people say I'm great or whatever. I'm smart. I'm intelligent. And money comes to me. I don't usually do that, but I talk about the people I'm meeting and what's about to happen in a positive mindset. Visualization, which is seeing things going your way. So for instance, I have this I think I learned it from Tony Robbins many years ago, but if I'm going into a meeting and it's important, I'll visualize sort of a blue circle right in front of the door of where that meeting is. And when I walk through that circle, I feel myself being uplifted and empowered and so on and so forth. And so I'll do that. And then when I walk into that meeting, I have that memory, that positive memory. And then it's exercise, which you can, by the way, download a program called 10-minute exercise or something. It's pretty intense. It's not very long, obviously. Reading, scribing are the other two. So I'll always read.
So read a good book for a period of time. 10 minutes. Okay. Yeah.
And then scribing, write in your journal.
Just journaling. Journaling. Yeah. I tell my students, just journal some magic moments, journal what's going on in your life. Fantastic. You know, guys, when you set your day up like that, you know, and he's talking about visualization, and a piece that I do and I was showing David my vision boards that I look in almost daily is, you know, I'll be grateful for, and you call it prayer, whatever, you know, whatever works for you. I'll be grateful for the things that I have in my life at first, and then I'm grateful for things that I want as if I already have them, which is, you know, like manifesting prayer. So awesome. So it's called Miracle Morning for Millionaires, correct? Right. The book you wrote with Hal. That's awesome.
So Hal and I wrote this together, and he's got a series of books. So it's the Miracle Morning for students or for different, you know, recovering addicts, different things. Right. We wrote the one for millionaires, and all we did was we tweaked in this idea that when you're doing your reading, for instance, instead of reading a book, you might read your journal. So I've got my goals here. I'm an extremely goal-driven person.
Oh, love that.
One thing I do is read my goals as often as I can, right? And so one thing, the difference between millionaires and non-millionaires is that millionaires are always extremely purposeful. Successful people are always purposeful. So can you use that extra hour in the morning, not just to win the day, but also to align yourself that day with the goals and the outcomes and the purposes that you've set for your life? And the more purposeful you are in life, the more outcomes you tend to get that go your way. So that's what we did. We did the visualizations around the meetings, the visualizations. I agree with you that you should see yourself as abundant before you are, like be grateful for what you have and what is going to come to be. There's a certain like mental state that has to precede success in life. Gratitude and acceptance of being successful. It's not that easy to be successful. Everyone thinks it is. You look at it, you're like, oh, you know, there's two kind of money problems in life, not enough and too much. And, you know, too much money isn't as easy as people would think it is. There's a lot of people that, you know, there's a lot of challenges you have around a large business, a large number of employees, a large, and that has it. So then getting comfortable with that, visualizing that going well, having covenant relationships with your key people so that you take really good care of them as they take really good care of your business and all your employees, frankly, having everyone in a culture that is abundant is all part of this mindset you can set up in the morning.
I love it. And just as an aside to what you just said, there are problems and there are quality problems. And I like to work towards having quality problems. And I think you do as well. So let me ask you this, because, you know, this is a good question to ask you. If you could teach school children one thing that, you know, what might it be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super happy. I'm really happy with the school my kid's at, which is called the Acton Academy. But I would teach them how to start a business from scratch using their creative skills. I think soft skills are way more important today than hard skills. Now, we need plenty of scientists and mathematicians, don't get me wrong. So that's the STEMs. But if you're not inclined that way, which I never was, then you need to learn how to work with people. Sales is a really, really good skill to have. Communication is a really, really good skill. I got my 9-year-old not stand up. What's that called? Where you have to make jokes all the time on a running basis. Anyway.
It's a kind of ad-libbing kind of thing.
Ad-libbing, exactly. Yeah. What's that called?
Oh God, what's the name for that? I know what you're talking about. Yeah. It's where comedians will start a story. Someone else has to finish it.
And you're never allowed to say no. It's always got to be a positive add-on.
I love it. Love it.
So I think those kind of skills. And then my school also has a business fair every year. The kids create a business if they choose every year. This year, my daughter and 2 of her friends are doing painted rocks. So they've been painting a bazillion rocks. We keep a budget. They're having a good time. And then they'll go to this fair where adults will show up and hopefully buy a bunch of rocks.
Painted rocks. Huh? Yeah, I love it. I love it. So let me ask you this. You know, if you were going to go back and tell your 20-year-old self something, is there anything that you might say or do differently or coach your younger self on?
Yeah. I mean, I was a rebel without a clue at 20. So 20 was a tough age. I was full of energy and dumber than a rock. I used to call myself a spaceship without a pilot. But what I would say is settle down, be clear on your purpose, think really hard about what you want in life and start going after it. Even if what you want changes, even if what you don't get what you want, the sooner you get into the habit of being purposeful, like having a purpose. I think having a purpose is really the essence of success. And it doesn't matter whether your purpose is to feed the homeless or shelter the homeless or cure cancer or make $1 billion, whatever it is. The key is to have a purpose that inspires you and gets you going. And remember, you can change that purpose. The skill set that's most important is choosing something and getting after it versus whatever that it is. The it doesn't matter, right? A great planet, a great country, a great community is made up of a bunch of individuals working really hard towards a purpose that they've chosen that inspires them and thrills them. And that will create a positive impact in and of itself on society and all the people around them. So choose something. I would say think less about what you earn and more about what you learn. What you earn isn't that important. What you learn is, especially at that age. Be around great, high-minded people. The better your social circle, the easier life becomes. And if you're not lucky enough to be born into a good social circle, go find it. There are all kinds of people out there. Go find somebody smart and successful and offer to work for them for free or for half price or minimum wage or whatever. That's the apprenticeship of a life. And that really is, for me, like the difference in my life that certain individuals have made has been massive. So find those people and go work for them.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And guys, if you're not in my big multifamily group, there's 21,000 people in there that want more out of life. That's a great place to start hunting for people to connect with. That's just go to multifamilycommunity.com, and it's a direct link to that Facebook group. You know, you are obviously an incredible leader, David. What's one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess?
Well, you have to learn how to hire great people. I think you have to really master the art of hiring people that fit the role they're going to play. And then I think in order to do that, you have to master the art of being purposeful and having a very big vision. Nobody great wants to work for somebody with a small vision, but nor do they want to work with somebody that has a big vision but has no track record. So you have to do both. You have to work towards your visions, make sure you're getting stuff done, make sure you're getting the outcomes. And then you got to be able to create a picture that's bigger than that person can currently see for themselves. They have to fit inside your world. They have to see a way for them to hit their economic goals inside your world. And then ultimately you have to understand it's a covenant relationship. Like not everyone earns the right to have a covenant relationship, but when an employee shows up and performs at a really high level, you should be as dedicated to that person hitting their goals as they are to yours. The right people, by the way, aren't out there measuring who's doing more and who's doing less. The right people are all in all the time. And if they're aligned with your goals, they're all in for your goals all the time. So make sure you respect and treat that relationship well and try to help them hit their goals.
Oh, it's fantastic. I've been furiously taking notes. This is stuff that I need, that's really resonating with me personally. So let me ask you this. What did you have to give up? I mean, you're extremely successful, but everybody thinks that, you know, it's just an easy path. What did you have to give up or sacrifice to be where you are today, if anything?
I worked 20 years in 10. I mean, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I gave up, you know, really having a family. I was probably the worst boyfriend ever. I'm lucky enough now to have a family. I started late. I have 3 beautiful kids, 2 daughters and a son, but I started late. And honestly, my girlfriend, who I eventually married, once said to me, dating you is like being in the backseat of your car, because I worked so hard. That's what I did. I worked all the time, and I was very into that. And I said, I'm sorry, honey, that's terrible. Why do you put up with it? And she said, every now and then you put me in the front seat and it feels so nice. So you give up a lot. I mean, that work was intense and I was all in for it. I loved it. So I'm not going to say, I'm not trying to sound like a martyr or a victim here. I enjoyed it. I got a lot of significance from it.
Sure.
But I was working the 70, 80 hours a week for 10 years. And that's what it took. And I got lucky. So sometimes it's 20 years, you know. But I think if you're willing to put in the time for 10 years, you're going to win at whatever you do.
No question. No question. Tell me about a defining moment, like an epiphany moment for you in your business career.
Okay. So I was launching franchises for Keller Williams up in Dallas. And, you know, I had an agent that I'd recruited. I was recruiting agents, recruiting managers, building franchises. And I had this agent that I recruited, and she was kind of a superstar. She was doing really well. And I was doing multiple businesses now. So I wasn't spending all my time at one. I was working on 4. And when I first recruited her, I was there all the time. That was my first one. And this agent said to me, she said to me, you know, David, I wasn't so sure about you when I first met you, but now I think you're a rock star. And I thought, well, what's happened in the last year that's different? And what I realized was I had just been around less. So because I was working on 4 businesses, she hadn't seen me as much. And because she hadn't seen me as much, she thought I was more of a rock star. And probably I changed a little, but my aha was, I'm only going to scale this thing if I could work through other people. And I'd hired a great manager
Oh.
finally at that business. And I realized it can't be all about me. If I'm around all the time, I don't care who you are. People get sick of you. They get bored of you. Like if
Well, and
LeBron,
you don't get scale. And it's hard to get scale,
you
right?
can't get scale. You
Right.
cannot get scale. And
Right.
LeBron James's best bud is like, it's just LeBron. I don't really care about him, right? So you've got to have some distance, some separation from all the little responsibilities so that you can go big. So you can't manage small. You can't go big by managing small. What I mean is you can't be worried about whether there's toilet paper in the bathroom and build a giant enterprise. You have to have the right people that handle all the different levels of the responsibility. And that was my aha of that conversation is the more I'm around, the less I'm respected and the smaller my world is, the broader I build my base, the more great people I hire. And then I just became obsessed with hiring. And since then I built my company by
Can I
hiring.
circle back? Let me circle that back to that. Can you give just a couple of tips for hiring great people from your incredible experience in that realm? Because that helps me, and I'm sure that's going to help anybody that's building a team.
Well, rule number one is you can't take a slug and turn him into a superstar. And people tend to make this mistake all the time. You can't pour your resources into somebody. So here's the clue. Great hires have a history of being great hires. If a guy comes to you and he's like, yeah, my last job sucked and my boss was a jerk. Like, what about the job before? Oh, that one sucked too. My boss was a jerk. What about the one before? That my boss sucked there too. So now I've come to you and you're going to change my life. In a year, that person will be saying you're a jerk and that job sucked too, right? So people don't change that much. You've got to hire the winners, not try to turn somebody into a winner. A person can turn themselves into a winner through a lot of effort and action and learning and coming to your podcast and reading books like I wrote and different things. That's a self-fulfilling journey. But you can't take somebody who you really like and is really sweet and make them into an accountability machine.
No.
So the way you hire is you should be like a therapist, marriage counselor, priest, asking a ton of questions and trying to find out the history of how that person has behaved. And how they've behaved historically will be how they'll behave for you. So that's I think the biggest mistake people make is they hire people they like, that they enjoy, that this guy's got great energy. They're just like me. Well, usually when you're hiring, you don't want someone just like you.
Right.
If you're hiring an accountant, you need somebody accurate and detail oriented. If you're hiring a salesperson, you need somebody peppy and willing to go out there and push it. Look at the history of their life, find the right behavior and profile you're looking for. And just remember, eagles don't fly alone. People always say eagles fly alone, but they really don't. Eagles fly with other eagles. Mm. So if you fill your company with hard-charging, hard-working people, you're going to have a great company. But if you expect to have one great person and 4 soft, kind of not getting stuff done people, eventually the eagle's going to fly away. In that case, they will fly alone.
Wow. Wow. That was very helpful for me personally. Thank you. So, what inspires you? What gets you? I mean, you're such a supercharged individual. You're still pushing forward. You're still making things happen. You haven't settled. You know, what's your driver? Are there some quotes you like, or is there a personality trait or a thought process that you have? What motivates you, my friend?
So I love, my kids motivate me more than anything, but that's, right. That's just the hearth that I get to go home to.
Nice.
Transformation, doing things that are difficult, seeing people transform, seeing people achieve more than they thought they could achieve, helping people become financially free and escape the rat race. These are the kind of things that inspire me. So right now I'm working with probably 10 different individuals, and I think at least half of them have a chance of becoming financially free through association with me, through working on as part of my team. That is really fun and inspiring for me. I love seeing young talent emerging, and I've got some young people now that are just killing it. I just made an offer to another young guy that I think is going to be a major difference maker. I like to provide the courage and the framework for people to exceed what they thought they could do without me. And what happens is a lot of people get caught in like corporate environments, and that's a trap. It's like a golden prison. Right. And ultimately, it might be good, you get more money now, but in 10 years, you can almost predict your income scale in a big corporation. Sure. If that person will come out and take a risk working with me, and they're the right person, they might take a 50% pay cut at the beginning, but because they get equity in the upside, if they do well over 10 years, they can be so much further than that person caught in the corporate environment. So that's a lot of fun for me. I love coaching, teaching. I like writing the books. I like making a difference in others' lives. The reason I'm still in business, because I don't have to work really, is just because it keeps me engaged. It keeps me engaged with these amazing people, and that keeps me sharp and excited and helps me make a difference.
I love it. I love it. That's what drives me as well. I've got a wall behind me with hundreds of thank you cards from along the same lines. So you talked about helping someone have courage. What's the most courageous thing you've ever done?
Oh,
and I know I didn't prepare you for any of these, so it's amazing how fast you respond too. I'm blown away by how quick you come back.
Burying my dad was tough. Like my dad died of cancer, 3 years nursing him. Putting that really will teach you a lot. It'll grow you up as a man. Yeah. Getting married was pretty scary for me. I don't know how it was for you. Yeah,
okay.
And then being my son was born and he was in the NICU for 5 days.
Oh wow,
that was tough. Scary. I don't know if those require courage or not, but I mean the bravest thing. I mean those are just circumstances you have to deal with.
Right.
As tough as they are, I'm grateful for them because it really puts life in perspective.
Sure.
But building my business was scary too, and.
That's kind of where I was going with that, but I really appreciate you being vulnerable and talking about these major things in your life, because there are a lot of people listening to this show that know they want more, they know they deserve more, and I teach the technical side in the podcast, but really 80 to 90% of your success, as you know, is the mindset, it's the psychology, it's actually pushing outside the fear, getting uncomfortable, and taking action. What would you tell those people that are listening in that place?
So look, I've had a lot of business success. I've probably forgotten how scary it was at first. And my parents weren't rich by any means. We were definitely the middle of the middle class, but they were behind me, which I know some people don't have that. So that was nice.
Nice.
But the thing is, you've got to leap, man. You've got to, no one's going to starve. No one's going to be homeless. The people listening to your podcast.
Right. You're saying worst case. You're not going to be homeless. You're not going to, you're going to have food. You're going to have clothes.
You're going to have food. You're going to have shelter. You're going to have covering. So what have you got to lose? Like you're going to either fall into a trap of something you dislike for 30 years, being an employee of someone else, or you're going to go work for yourself. If you fail, if the worst thing happens and you have to file bankruptcy, you still have more skill because of what happened. And you can at least go to your, the end of your day saying, I tried and I failed. If you never try, you've got really nothing to lose, because even when you fail, you'll come back a more valuable person to your next employer because of the failure. So, it's so cliche to say, just go for it, jump out of the nest and just go all in. But honestly, the younger you are, the more crazy you should be. I was crazy in what I did and I went all in, but I didn't have any responsibilities. I didn't have kids. I understand it's way harder with all that stuff, but every single failure has paid me more than the successes. So I've got 1 million successes that people praise me for, and I've got 100 failures that no one can see, that only I remember and one or two other guys. But the gift has been in all those failures. And that's what makes you the guy you are. Just like when I said burying my dad and having my son in the NICU, it's those kind of experiences no one can ever take away from you, the kind of character you have to develop dealing with that stuff. And it's not even like you can say, oh, I'm courageous, I dealt with it, and that built character. You have no choice. Your son's in the NICU, you're building character. That's the only choice you have unless you run away. Same with business. You have a business failure, and it's the best moments. I know no one would choose them, but it's really the failures are what make you who you are, and it gives you the courage. So the reason I'm able to do bigger and bigger things is because I've been through the failures and I realize they're really not that big a deal. They're painful, but they're not the end of the earth, because there's always another day. And that foundation you've created of dealing with the pain, the difficulty, I shouldn't say pain, because really what is the pain? No one's torturing me. No one's pulling my fingernails off. I'm just dealing with some challenges. And that makes it easy today to kind of laugh at risk in a way that I wasn't able to do when I was younger.
No, I love it. And I call them seminars. And I've built 24 businesses myself, and many have been spectacular flaming seminars, but you grow. I talk about, I got to meet Sarah Blakely in one of my masterminds that I'm in, and she started out with 5,000. Now she's a billionaire, owns Spanx, the undergarment thing.
That's an amazing story.
Right. And she told me her dad used to ask her, at the dinner table, what have you failed at today? Isn't that an awesome question for your kids?
We've copied that, and I don't do it every day because I always forget, but I have it written on my kids' playbook. What did you fail at today?
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, my friend, you've added tremendous value. Guys, go out and get Wealth Can't Wait. Go out and get the Miracle Morning, our Miracle Morning for Millionaires. And yeah, fantastic books. I highly endorse them. And Dave, thanks for being on the show, my friend. You've added a ton of value.
It's been a pleasure, man. Shameless promotion there.
Likewise.
Thanks, brother.
No, that's awesome. Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please take a minute to visit iTunes and leave your comments. For more resources or to connect with us further, please please visit our website at rodkhleif.com. Tune in next week for our next show.